Hi, everyone around the world. From me and from Fluffy. I've got Fluffy tonight, the one who is such a scamp and loves to play games and loves to run every time he hears the sounds that the lights are coming on. He turns it into a game. But tonight, I outfoxed him, and he is one of the most adorable, friendly, smart, just all-round life. He's just so, I don't know, just so wonderful. I'm glad that I've got him tonight to share with you. And I want to tell you that we broke through 175,000 subscribers last week. And I want to thank so much all of you for your enthusiastic support and for keeping me updated on high strangeness where you live. Please, for the upcoming summer solstice Earthfiles celebration, June 23rd, send me your recorded questions for me to answer in that celebration. And Ian is receiving and organizing your recorded questions, and this is the way to reach him. questions@earthfiles.com. Now, earlier this week, on Monday, May 24th, beginning at 11 a.m. East Coast time, residents in Virginia Beach, Virginia, and beyond to the ocean front in Hampton Roads and further north in York County reported hearing a very loud boom, felt their houses shake, and heard windows rattle. One ear witness in Northern Virginia Beach compared the boom sound to, quote, a loud noise like thunder, close quote. Another user of the Nextdoor app in Virginia Beach wrote, quote, anyone else here feel what sounded like an explosion around 11:10 a.m. Eastern on Monday, May 24th, close quote. The Virginia Pilot newspaper contacted Virginia's Langley Air Force Base that reported there were not any explosive ordnance disposal exercises on Monday morning, 2 days ago. Associated Press reached out to the Virginia National Guard, which operates Camp Pendleton State Military Reservation in Virginia Beach. But there was no military guard activity on Monday either that would have caused house-shaking loud booms. A U.S. Geological Survey seismologist, Don Blakeman, told Associated Press that the geographic area of the boom reports is so large that, quote, I don't see any earthquake that would have been big enough for all of these people reporting to feel it, close quote. It was over quite a large geographic area. Now, in my own reports at earthfiles.com, 6 years ago, on September 22nd, 2015, also along the eastern shores of Virginia Beach and 105 miles northeast through Hampton on out to Chincoteague Island. The fire department there received many reports, like what happened Monday, from residents about huge booms that shook houses. Eyewitnesses even reported, quote, seeing flames in the sky, close quote, to authorities. But the fire crews on Chincoteague Island said it was not flames. The firemen were quoted as describing, quote, a red cloud drifting across the sky out over the water that quickly dissipated, close quote. But no one had an explanation for that red cloud. Also contacted were the U.S. Coast Guard, NASA's installation on Wallop Island, and the Virginia Department of Wildlife. There were no official explanations for the house-shaking booms or the red flaming cloud. So that means between 2015 and 2021, in exactly the same areas of Virginia on the coast, the same kind of reports have been made by many residents, hearing loud explosive booms, feeling their house shake. Some people have had cracked foundations. And yet no authority, then or now, comes up with an explanation. And that's why I would like to hear from any of you who may have been ear witnesses this week in Virginia, or that you've had experiences with things so loud that other neighbors around you even heard and that you talked about it, or any of the other sounds. I think somehow we have to stay on top of these strange sounds. There's got to be an explanation. I'm also interested in whether any of you whistleblowers from military or intelligence might know what is behind these persistent booms, rumblings, metallic, scraping, and trumpet sounds that have been intermittently ongoing under and above this planet, because some people have reported feeling the bottoms of their feet slapped. Other people have said the sound definitely came from above down. Whatever it is, it's been going on since 2011. Could it be that some sources of strange, unexplained sounds around the world in both hemispheres are linked to UFO, UAP alien presences that are underground, underwater, and inside mountains? Please help me and write to me at Earthfiles, Post Office Box 21843, Albuquerque, New Mexico 87154. All requests for confidentiality are always honored. What helps me is being able to get solid data, solid military and intel knowledge that I can try to keep trying to put together like a puzzle. And then reporting to all of you here at the Earthfiles YouTube channel and my Earthfiles website. Now, last week on May 18th, 2021, even former President Barack Obama commented about UFO UAPs to James Corden on that late night broadcast. At nearly a half hour into the discussion, Corden asked President Obama about UFO UAPs.
What is true, and I'm actually being serious here, is that there's footage and records of objects in the skies that we don't know exactly what they are. We can't explain how they moved, their trajectory. They did not have an easily explainable pattern. And so, I think that people still take seriously trying to investigate and figure out what that is.
And since we're in the 2021 180-day UFO UAP countdown that is supposed to lead for the first time that an American Secretary of Defense, in collaboration with the Director of National Intelligence, is supposed to tell Congress and the American people some truth about advanced aerial threats and associated foreign adversaries, I would like to share with you a letter mailed to me from a Navy commander on board the USS Enterprise all the way back in 1979 that has his own eyewitness description of a UFO UAP doing extraordinary maneuvers like former ATIP Director Luis Elizondo has been describing. Now, the letter is dated May 17th, 2021 to me. Dear Ms. Howe, in 1979, I was a Navy commander on board the USS Enterprise CVN-65. We were on an unlogged secret mission, one which even without identifying myself, I am ill prepared to divulge. The following mention had nothing to do with our mission. We were about 200 miles off the coast of Fortaleza, Brazil, heading north. Radar picked up an object heading west toward our starboard side at around 2,500 miles an hour. I gave the order to launch 2 F-14 Tomcat jets to intercept if needed. They got within around 100 yards of the object, a silvery saucer which they described as being about 80 feet in diameter and about 20 feet high, with no visible seams but what appeared to be two small portholes. The saucer and our jets were at an altitude of around 19,000 feet. Suddenly, the saucer streaked straight up into space like a blur. The Tomcats had no chance of pursuit. Both pilots and their RIOs were men who had flown numerous missions in Nam. They were not inexperienced rookies. When they returned, I began debriefing them. All four men were shaken. F-14 pilots were not used to any other craft outrunning them, let alone moving at what appeared to be light speed. The incident was reported and it disappeared into the military establishment, probably filed away in some file cabinet in the Pentagon or the DIA offices or both. Before that incident, I was a UFO skeptic. Just thought I would let you know that probably 99% of military UFO sightings are never divulged to the public. One deep thinker about the question of other life in this universe and the need for Earth scientists to search for the physical evidence of technology relics that advanced civilizations might have left throughout the Milky Way galaxy and beyond is Avi Loeb, Ph.D. For the past decade, from 2011 to 2020, Professor Loeb has been the longest-serving chair of Harvard University's Department of Astronomy. In 1969, he was born in Bet Hanan, Israel. By age 24, Avi Loeb had earned his Ph.D. in plasma physics from the Hebrew University in Jerusalem. His career kept growing all the way to Harvard. In 2015, he was appointed Science Theory Director for the Breakthrough Prize Foundation, focused on light sail propulsion for small exploratory craft to go to the nearest star system of Alpha Centauri. Professor Loeb is also the founding director of Harvard's Black Hole Initiative in 2016. In October 2017, there were astronomy headlines about the first interstellar object ever to be tracked into our solar system. Hawaii astronomers were the first to report the flat, somewhat rectangular object that reflected an odd reddish color, but had no evidence of ice as would be expected on normal comets or asteroids. Those astronomers gave the first interstellar object ever seen the Hawaiian name Oumuamua, which means scout leader in the Polynesian language. Professor Avi Loeb was so provoked by the facts that Oumuamua did not seem to be a comet or an asteroid that he wrote a beautiful book entitled Extraterrestrial: The First Sign of Intelligent Life Beyond Earth. The book was released at the end of 2020, hypothesizing that the first interstellar visitor could have an artificial origin. Was Oumuamua perhaps an activated probe of our solar system, or a relic from some ancient civilization that had already grown up in the earlier universe? Earth is only 4.6 billion years old in a 13.8 billion light-year cosmos. So the Milky Way galaxy is much younger than the earliest epoch of our ever-expanding universe. Before humans, there could have been many other intelligences in many different galaxies. In the beginning, Professor Loeb was intrigued by the flat shape of Oumuamua.
On October 19, 2017, the very first object that came from outside the solar system was spotted near Earth by a telescope in Hawaii called Pan-STARRS. It looked very weird. As one of my colleagues said after a seminar about this object is so weird, I wish it never existed, which in my mind is the wrong attitude, that we should be thrilled when there is something unexpected, because then we learn something new. So what was unusual about this object? It didn't have any cometary tail. no trail of gas or dust around it. So it was definitely not a comet. And as it was tumbling every 8 hours, it reflected sunlight. It changed by a factor of 10. It meant that the object has an extreme shape, most likely flat shape, and that is unusual.
If we had this object, Oumuamua, come through in October of 2017 with as many telescopes and astronomical observations that we are used to seeing on Earth, is it true that there were no photographs, no spectroscopy on Oumuamua?
Yes, we couldn't take a photograph because it was the size of a football field and at a distance of a fraction of the distance to the sun. So our telescopes cannot really resolve such an object. We were not prepared that there might be a physical object crossing our sky that came from outside the solar system. We were just not ready for that. And my hope is we will get much more data on the next object that comes along. And we shouldn't necessarily expect it to be a functional piece of equipment. Most of the stars formed billions of years before the sun. And if you think about Voyager 1, Voyager 2, New Horizons, the kind of equipment we sent into space, it will not be functional a billion years from now. So it may well be that space has a lot of trash in it, equipment that is not functioning anymore.
Could you give me your perspective on what NASA said, quote, "This is the most extreme orbit ever seen." Help the audience understand why the Oumuamua orbit was so extreme and talk about the change in the speeds and why that might relate to it being an interstellar foreign technology.
Right. So this was the first object that originated from outside the solar system. The trajectory that it took was unusual and never seen before. It was the very first one that came from outside. And all the other objects were bound to the sun. You know, the planets are moving around the sun. They're bound gravitationally. And the same is true for comets or asteroids from inside the solar system. This one came from outside. So it was moving much faster than a typical object. And another possibility is that it's being used as a relay station for communication.
What you mean is that Oumuamua and where it came from could signal to us that there may be a communication, transportation, some kind of grid that is extraterrestrial, and we simply have not been introduced to it yet.
Yes, that's a possibility. So there are lots of opportunities here if we allow ourselves to engage in what I call space archaeology, which is just like archaeology on Earth, except doing it in space. Basically finding relics of civilizations that might not be around anymore. Just looking for those relics is a new frontier. Oumuamua was a wake-up call for us.
In terms of the archaeology, it is a fascinating concept because this is a 13.8 billion light year universe, and we're only in the 4.6 billion most recent section of it. Michio Kaku has described the possibility that there could be maybe 4 different epochs of evolutionary life and intelligence in this universe. And applying what you just said about becoming more aware of how we could study archaeology in the universe, what would be the methods that you would want to see installed for us to start looking at the universe as a place where intelligence and consciousness has been and probably still is?
Yeah, so in the past, we searched for signals from other civilizations, radio signals, and I think it's the wrong approach because it's just like trying to have a phone conversation, and for that you need the counterpart to be alive. It's quite possible that most of the technological civilizations are not around anymore. They died by now. That doesn't mean that we cannot really learn about them because we can look for relics, and that's a completely different approach. You're looking for physical objects floating in space, just like plastic bottles on the beach or floating on the ocean. And the point is that you do not depend on whether the civilization that sent is still around. And I think that approach we should take. And how can we identify artificial objects and distinguish them from natural objects? The answer is we just need a close-up photograph or to land on it. It's easier to take a photograph. And so my suggestion is to plan a spacecraft that we can either launch on a short notice or have it ready in space already before we identify an interstellar object that looks weird, and then come close to its trajectory when it's approaching us. We don't need to chase it. We just need to cross its trajectory at the right place at the right time. This is my recommendation for the near future, taking close-up photographs of all weird interstellar objects that behave in a way that we haven't expected from rocks. If we had that technology, we could have chased Oumuamua because it was moving at roughly 10% of the speed of light. And if we have a spacecraft moving much faster than that, we can easily reach it and take a close-up photograph. But unfortunately, we don't have that technology ready at the moment.
Well, we're in a 180-day countdown from the COVID funding bill in December, in which Congress, specifically in the last 2 pages of the bill, requests the Secretary of Defense and the Director of National Intelligence at what would be 180 days after the signing of the bill, December 27th, 2020, and that would be June 24th, 2021, next month. It specifically says in the bill that Congress is asking the Secretary of Defense and the Director of National Intelligence to provide information to Congress and the American people about advanced aerial threats, unidentified aerial phenomena, and associated or linked to foreign adversaries. So everybody's been waiting for this 180-day countdown to hear, perhaps for the first time ever, from somebody in the Pentagon and the Department of Defense, talk about unidentified aerial phenomena and advanced aerial threats.
Yes, I'm also very much waiting to see more information about it, and it would be very interesting to look at the evidence. I personally think that we should engage in establishing a scientific experiment where if there are reports that look very compelling about evidence for something unusual, we should deploy the very best cameras we have right now, audio sensors we have, in the same locations and collect more data, more evidence, because we just want to firm up the evidence and see what it means. I believe that if we collect data in an open way, nobody can forbid a scientific experiment from collecting data in the same locations, then we can learn much more about the nature of these unusual phenomena.
And Professor Loeb, wouldn't it in a way be even stranger if we were in a universe 13.8 billion light years and evolving, in which Earth had the only intelligent life?
Yes, I think it's very likely that there were many civilizations at our level or even more advanced because we came to exist relatively late. Most of the stars formed billions of years before the sun, and if they had a similar history of life around them, there are lots of locations. About half of the sun-like stars have a planet the size of the Earth. We know that from the latest data from the Kepler satellite, and there could be tens of billions of other planets that have conditions similar to Earth just in the Milky Way alone. And then you have trillions of other galaxies like the Milky Way. I think the numbers are so staggering that it's very likely that, first of all, we are not the sharpest cookie in the jar. There were smarter kids on our blocks long before us. And we just need to search for evidence for those.
Well, it has never made sense to me that we would be in a universe empty of intelligence and that Homo sapiens sapien would be the only intelligent life force. That seems to me so improbable that it's almost an unscientific statement.
Right. And it's also an arrogant statement to believe that you're special and unique and you're the only one. that you can imagine a species that is far more intelligent than we are. And therefore, when I read the morning news that we should look into space for intelligence because we don't find it very often here on Earth, Oumuamua and the objects like it, I would like to know whether we have artificial objects entering the solar system and what do they mean.
It was fun this week to interview Professor Avi Loeb at Harvard for tonight's Earthfiles YouTube channel broadcast about his fascinating hypothesis that Oumuamua might have been an active probe or a relic of technology trash from another civilization, as he put it, expanding the idea that there could have been so many intelligent civilizations earlier in this universe than we humans, and might still be out there in, we have no idea how many numbers, and that eventually we might find one of the more ancient technology relics. He and I will also be speakers at the upcoming 2021 Contact in the Desert. It's an all virtual event because of COVID, and that begins a month from now on Friday, June 25th through Monday, June 28th. I urge all of you to get your tickets now by going to contactinthedesert.com. That's contactinthedesert, one word, .com. I'm going to be talking about resonant frequencies between our human brains and the quantum field of this universe, and more about what remote viewers and people in the human abduction experience say about the agendas of the other intelligences that they have encountered, from friendly to neutral to a few that are hostile. So I look forward to your feedback on the virtual Contact in the Desert in June. And it's great to be with you now in our virtual handshake at Earthfiles YouTube channel. And I am very interested in what your comments and questions are in the sort of in the broad scope of what Professor Loeb was talking about, that some things that we might encounter could be leftovers and trash from another civilization, while we are actively in the process of trying to see if our government will tell us the truth, that we're not alone in this universe, and that there are all kinds of strange technologies that are monitored in military and other technologies literally all of the time. So it is in a strange way, it's an exciting time when you keep feeling maybe we're finally going to break the policies of denial and the policies of lies. So with a wish for that, and to keep reporting about whatever happens at Earthfiles YouTube channel with all of you, Ian, what have you got lined up for our first question?
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank all the generous YouTube and Earthfiles viewers for the generous super chats tonight. And I've got my list here. We've got Mary Kelly, Dave Goodridge, Dr. Dolores Mize, Minnesota Folk, Jeffrey Rizzo, Brenda Doyle, Blincho, Kira Lee Sims, Peace Party, Nathan Moshkin, Ethan Burnt, Joan Oishi, Chrissy Marr, Andrew Darcy, and Sexy Sadie.
That's another name that cycles around. Thank you. Thank you, all of you, so much. It means everything that you want to keep supporting the effort for Earthfiles YouTube channel, and with your help, we keep going and growing. So all of you out there who are thinking about the questions you would like to commit to a recording that we can use in a month on the June 23rd summer solstice celebration. We might be close to 180,000 subscribers by then. That would be thrilling. Get your recorded questions to Ian at questions questions at, give it out, Ian.
It's questions@earthfiles.com. Just questions@earthfiles.com. And you don't have to send a video if you don't want to. You can send a still picture.
Great.
That would do as well.
Oh.
We'd also like to know where you are.
Yeah, that is great. I'm glad you're bringing that up, that we can definitely take still photographs and we can super whatever question you would like over or at the bottom half. And I would love to be able to give the city and the state, the city, the province, the city and the country. I would like to identify where all of you who submit are on the planet. So get them to Ian. Okay, what have we got next in questions?
Well, first of all, the comments are that the audience agrees with you, Lord, about continuing the research on the booms. They say, keep doing it, Linda.
Yes.
So keep doing it.
And I need all of your help to keep me informed. And for those of you who hear something and you're carrying around a cell phone, just record. And I'll tell you what technical people have told me. Try to, if it lasts for a long time, the best would be a minimum of 5 minutes, uncut, no stopping, no conversation, nothing, just 5 minutes of the sound from beginning to end. And then any increments lower than that, but a long 5-minute piece that has nothing else but the sound, we might learn something. And I know that's a challenge. Even a minute, uninterrupted, no talking, nothing, just the sound. That's the goal. Okay.
Okay, Linda, I'm going to go straight to the questions then. We've got a question for Linda now. What is Linda's own opinion about these objects such as Oumuamua? Are they like drones like we use on Mars? And does she really think there's biological entities flying these things?
I wish we were in a room and I could say, how many of you have seen my documentary, Antarctica, Alien Secrets Beneath the Ice? We can pretend a lot of you have seen that documentary. And it's in the documentary. It's in the, I think it's in the last half, and it is where Spartan 2 had firsthand information that Spartan 1 backed up, that they knew that we had some, I'm just going to say intel, about what we know as Oumuamua, that somehow somebody with some technology knew that this object was out there, was coming toward the sun, and that they were able to determine in some way that it was this is in Antarctica, a derelict craft. That's what Spartan 1 and Spartan 2, they had a discussion. They knew it was a derelict craft. Now, derelict usually means something that is no longer in practical use. And that's sort of Avi Loeb's perspective. But the Spartan 1 and Spartan 2 also left open the possibility that it was still an active probe here to gain some kind of information, even if it was old and ancient. So I don't have any bottom line proof. I would very much like to have bottom line proof. But neither does Professor Loeb and, let's say, people in the white world. We don't have proof. So the question hangs out there, proposed by Spartan 1 and Spartan 2, that the military intel side of the world, perhaps working with extraterrestrials, which I have not one question that we are doing, that there are or is some kind of collaboration with some type of another intelligence that may be humanoid, and that we have been working in some kind of collaboration for some time. There are too many people who have had pieces of that as firsthand testimony. And if that were the case, then when Spartan 1 and Spartan 2 say they know that we had intelligence, that this was a derelict craft, it could be because we are working in collaboration right now with non-humans, not Homo sapiens sapien, but humanoid, that have been helping us get out into the Milky Way on interstellar trade routes. That is a bigger scope, and in that bigger scope, you can understand why some of the whistleblowers might make statements like, we know that it was a derelict craft, which adds to me not a kind of, I don't know, an excitement that even though we haven't been introduced as the human family to the reality that we're in a universe that's booming and buzzing with all kinds of energies and consciousness, and like one of the presentations that I'm doing at Contact in the Desert, it literally has to do with the discovery of very minute tubules in the human brain that appear to have resonance with frequencies. And one of the hypotheses is that the vibrations have to do with the quantum field of this universe. And the more I've studied, and what I'll be presenting, is that not just Homo sapiens sapien, and not just a Nordic humanoid, but the implication is that all consciousness, no matter what it is, in this universe, has a vibratory relationship with the entire quantum field of the universe. And that when somebody like Paget, the man that I did a presentation a few months ago, beat up at a karaoke bar, and when he became conscious in the hospital, all he was seeing were fractals, energy systems. To this day, some part of his brain was activated in an intense way, and he is like seeing the underskirt of the universe in fractal patterns. And when Roger Penrose says the true nature of this universe and the cosmos with a capital C is constant cycles in time, patterns, geometrics, fractals, all going in patterns of cycles. So you stand back from it, and it seems like that a lot of things in many different directions are trying to show us, tell us that we are in a universe that if we were trained in a way like controlled remote viewers, that we might be able to have an ongoing relationship between our human brain and the entire universe in ways that we never thought possible. And that may be the future evolution for us and for all of the, say, potential civilizations that are currently in the 4.6 billion most recent section of this cosmos. And then the others going back and back and back in time, there may be relics, but we are in an active, evolving, younger part of the universe. And to make contact with advanced life forms that could teach us and get past all of this feeling that it's a big, deep, dark secret that we're not alone, or that what's the big, dark secret is that we are not alone, that there are other life forms, there are other intelligences, that this is a very, very vibrant universe, at least this 4.6 billion section we're in, and that there are other life forms. Why does that need to be kept a secret? So my wish and hope is that you and I we'll be having these Earthfiles YouTube channel broadcasts when we get some honest truth and acknowledgement about this incredible cosmos that we're in, and that we are not alone. As Avi Loeb agreed, it doesn't make any sense, not even scientifically, that Earth would be the only planet out of 3 trillion galaxies to have life like ours. It seems way more logical that humans are an echo, a reflection of intelligences out there that mix and match genes and make life on various planets for their own experimentation. And it doesn't bother me to acknowledge that we are one of those experiments, because to be alive, to be able to interact on a planet like this, what a glorious gift if we just get past all the policies of lies and denials. So onward, Ian, to the next thought or question.
The question, in the countdown to what could be the disclosure we've all been waiting for, can you speak, please, of the credibility of Bob Lazar and the information that he brought forward?
Bob Lazar is a good guy. I knew him at a time when I was between Colorado and doing work in New York, and then Atlanta and CNN. And he was introduced to me by John Lear and colleagues of John Lear. And that would have been, I believe I met Bob for the first time in 1988. I know I was working on my first book, An Alien Harvest. And I remember that the first sort of large bead that Bob Lazar and John Lear and that group, that they talked to me about first on the phone, was that Bob had been able to get work through Edward Teller at Los Alamos in New Mexico, and that Bob was not a Ph.D., but he had a facility of dealing with things that were electronic and engineering, and that he had a job that was something else at Los Alamos when he got to ask Edward Teller, who in the 80s was, under Reagan, was head of the Star Wars project. And the story, as Bob Lazar told me himself, is that he asked, he was there in a lab at the same time or crossed paths with, I'm not certain about whether Edward Teller was there for a period of time or was working underground someplace else and then went to Los Alamos. I'm not clear on that, but that they passed in time at Los Alamos for a while. And that Bob Lazar simply asked, that he had heard that there was an underground facility at Area 51 S4 and wanted to know if he could get assigned, because he was very interested in the whole issue of UFOs and ETs and all of that. So whatever happened in between that discussion, from my point of view, the strongest that I heard Bob talk about it all was in the spring of 1990. In fact, I think it was Memorial Day weekend, like what we're coming up against. I was based at CNN reporting on for a show called Earthbeat, and Bob Lazar and John Lear and others were organizing around. They had these cars, these swoopy cars that they like to race on the flats, and Bob Lazar called me up and said, would you like to come out for this holiday that we're doing? And it will give us a chance to talk about what I really experienced and saw. And at that time, the controversy about whether or not he really had worked at an underground facility and all of that was not really a big deal. It was come and let's talk about what I saw and experienced. And he explained that the person who, or the company that hired him, it wasn't Los Alamos and it wasn't the Air Force, it was EG&G, but it was EG&G on a contract with the Navy. That's the way I understand it. And Bob, if you're listening and I have these details wrong, forgive me. I'm remembering our discussion back Memorial Day of 1990. But that's what I remember, was there was a Navy EG&G connection. And that he had 3 checks, as I recall, that proved at least limited time through EG&G working for the Navy, and that was like a piece of data. Well, when I went to be a part of that group in Las Vegas at Memorial Day weekend, the part that I remember was that he was the kind of person that is not going to say a lot of pretend things. He was a much more kind of reserved in his discussion about things. You've had the feeling as a reporter, you have the feeling that you're with somebody who is describing what they know and what they experienced. And that part of him really did not care whether people believed him or thought that there were ETs or UFOs, and all he wanted to do was to accomplish what he had done, that we had craft, they were not with wings, they were not human-made, that he was working in a facility where there were more than one craft propped up. And the most memorable part was his telling me that he was asked to climb, like a craft was propped up. Because of its shape like that, they had to prop it up on something. And that he had to go down, sort of like us, we think of the way people in high-end garages with cars, they have a way to go down and come up under the car to work on it. Only this was a UFO. And that while he was trying to get down under this craft, that he's going to be allowed to help analyze whatever it was that was under the craft. Next, in the next, whatever you want to call it, an area, they had another craft. And that craft was bigger and higher. And that he became fascinated watching, because he said it would look like a silver disc, like this, and then like a rectangle slice of the silver would just disappear. And he would see, he said it was just like looking through air. It had been silver metal, and then whatever they were doing, this slice would be like air. He would see 2 or 3 engineers inside. He could see that they were doing things with tools, and then suddenly the air's clear space, it would go back silver metal. Another one would open up all the way around. This UFO next to the one where he is was doing that, panel after panel after panel. And he said he came to understand from talking with some of the people that what those engineers were doing were testing to find how the UFO technology could be like a whole silver disc or disappear, or in sections, and that it was one of the more exciting and strange things that he saw in his brief time there. He talked about element 115. He talked about seeing a book or being handed, and a book may not be quite right. I've often wondered, was it really a book or was it more like a binder or what? But he said it was like a large book, and that he was given instructions to some degree about holding like the binder and turning the book, like if we picked up a book like this, and I would pick up a book like this. He said to deal with this extraterrestrial book, that you had to learn how your fingers touch certain places, that you would have to turn the book upside down and read it opposite of the way we read in order to read the extraterrestrial story and see holograms come up. He said it was just like Princess Leia. Holograms would come up from the pages. They could be like houses, it could be whatever they were showing. And then you would turn the book back, you would turn it over, various things having to do with spatial relationships and pressure. You would have two books in one, and with holograms. It's not quite comprehensible to us here, but that is one of the other interesting things that Bob told me about. All in all, I've always thought that he told exactly the truth about what he was exposed to. Later on came the charge that he was doing illegal computer work or something for a house of prostitution, and it was some big scandalous mishigash. But for those of us who knew Bob and the county where the house of prostitution was, it was legal in the state of Nevada, this house of prostitution. And that he was a computer guy, electronics guy, to make a living. It wasn't like some big scandal that he was doing accounting for this house of prostitution. Anyway, it got turned into, I guess I want to say squash, crush, get rid of, don't pay any attention to. Bob Lazar, he's not credible because he was doing that house of prostitution work. I never ever felt that he deserved that dismissal at all. I've always thought that he was a very intelligent person who somehow got himself into some of the EG&G naval work on UFOs, and that he is a living example who has been able to tell firsthand about being in an underground facility where the United States has UFOs of various sizes, various technologies. They are in many, many places underground. Wright-Patterson has many. So, as far as I'm concerned, that much that I know, that I personally had heard his discussions, I think he was telling the truth. So that's my contribution. I think for those of you who have ever seen the film that Bob Lazar put together, watch it with an open mind. And then ask yourself, why? Why, since World War II, has the government of the United States and the allies of World War II had a policy of lies and denial about what they knew were not human technologies that they were seeing and monitoring in World War II or after, and that the variety of different craft that came down in New Mexico and other places around the world, UFOs were not confined to Roswell 1947. They were before and after, and they have been around the world. What is it in the human civilization that is so afraid of telling the truth about other life, other intelligence in this universe, even if it means that we have to change textbooks, history books, to know the truth, to know the whole real truth about who we are, where we really did come from, what our ancestors are out in the universe? I want to know the answers to those questions. And I don't understand why the power brokers don't want us to know anything. You guys tell me. You tell me what your thinking is when we get into these subjects about whether the truth would contradict every single thing we've ever been taught. Would you still want to walk away from that truth? I don't think the vast majority of people want to walk away. I think the vast majority of people want to know the truth. So that's what we're fighting for here at the Earthfiles YouTube channel. So I hope that was not too long about Bob, but Ian, one more question, because we started a little bit late and I'll be very short.
No, that's right, Linda. I think people appreciated the clarification about the credibility of Bob, so thank you, and thank you for your personal information there. Well, there's I do have one last question I want to fit in, but there's a couple of comments on last night's moon, and you featured it, the
Yes.
blood moon and the moon eclipse, etc. But also, yesterday was the 60th anniversary of JFK's going to the moon speech.
It's true. It's true, isn't it? It's like Roger Penrose writes, the cycles of time. It is the oddest thing as you look through history at moments that come that seem to have a resonance with something that happened before. And those cycles, I try to pay attention when I know that something is cycling back around. And that is an odd confluence, and yet it is so typical of the universe that we are in. Is there any other question?
Well, the question that I think that you might like to finish on is, how do we talk to children about disclosure and how do we talk to people who may have learning difficulties about what's the changes that may be coming?
It's very good questions. I can share what I've experienced so far with my own granddaughter, Hannah Mead. She is bright, energetic, loves to do cartwheels, loves to play with animals, loves to explore, and she watches my Earthfiles YouTube channel. And one day, probably in January of this year, and it might have been influenced to some degree of her mom, my daughter, and Hannah being on the phone together talking about COVID and vaccines and a lot of things. We were in that kind of a discussion. And Hannah, who is so bright, so gifted, she just inserted, she calls me Mom. Mom, That was scary last night. It was on a Tuesday, or on a Thursday, and the night before had been an Earthfiles YouTube channel. And I said, what was scary? And she said, I don't know about those aliens. And I said, well, what would scare you? And she said, well, they're not like us. And in some ways, isn't that a sentence that is rippling through every layer of the world now in terms of human civilization? They are not like us. It can be said from neighborhood to neighborhood, city to city, state to state, nation to nation. We seem to be going through some period having to do with maybe a new readjustment in the human fabric of the soul itself. That we must learn how to embrace, or at least try to understand, other. Any other. And that my granddaughter, in putting it in those terms, brought it home to me. They're not like us. Well, ask yourself, have you ever not traveled to another country or another city because you were going to go to a place that was not like your house or your neighborhood? If you start asking in those simple questions and then you scale up. We've all heard stories that there may be 8 to 10 foot tall standing up alligators, lizards, and that the reptilians think that they own Earth, that they were here primally first, and that they're at war with the blonde ones that are our human progenitors. But the reptilians hate those blondes because they were interlopers into Earth, and the reptilians are really pissed off, and they have wanted for millennia to get the humans out so they would have Earth for themselves. And then somewhere in all of that, there are these gray beings that don't look like either. They don't look like the Nordics. They don't look like the reptilians. They are their own strange kind, and they seem to be dependent upon artificial intelligence. And we are then presented with, if any one or all three of them came into this office right now, what would Brad and I and Fluffy and Chocolate, what would we do? When you go through mind exercises, I used to do this in Philadelphia when I lived there, and I had talked with Raymond Fowler quite a bit about all of the experiences that Betty Andreessen had gone through. And hers had started with grays coming through the front door of her house, that she saw them come through in a, like almost like a echo. They looked like different, like not like 6 people, but reflections or something coming through the door. And then they turned into these gray beings. There's so much technology apparently that they have that we don't understand. But the thing about Betty Andreessen, whatever these grays were, which I'm assuming were AI, from progenitors that might be in this galaxy or another galaxy, that have made them to do exploration for them, that the progenitors aren't coming here, they're sending the grays that are some subspecies in AI. What Betty Andreessen became aware of instantly, she had total consciousness for a few moments. She realized that her mom, her dad, her children, her husband they were paralyzed in place. And Betty, with her consciousness not yet frozen, she saw the tableau, the gray beings, her entire family, everybody in a frozen moment. And then this incredible, the unfolding of the Betty Andreasson case. I recommend that the series of books that Raymond Fowler did with Betty Andreasson. She was a really fine illustrator, and her illustrations help all the way through the books. And in the end, even though she got to see all that paralysis, nothing happened to the people except loss of time, and herself included. It doesn't mean that I'm justifying anybody, human, extraterrestrial, any dimensional realm, of just suspending our ability to move and think. I'm not condoning missing time. And I'm not condemning it either. I'm trying to understand it. I'm trying to understand what is it truthfully that all of these beings want. And if it goes to the category that we were made to serve another life form in slave labor, and that something in the large infinite divine field decided to insert a very powerful soul in what otherwise would have been slave robot labor. And that now humans are at a point in their own evolution where we are having the most difficult time being with each other, listening to each other, on a lot of levels, from COVID to politics. Humans are going through a really, really rough time on planet Earth about how do we even live with this species. My personal final tonight to you is, I think if every human, forget the ETs for a minute, if every human could in a second love planet Earth as the womb that it is for life, and know that we, humans, can kill it. We can reduce the ability for life on Earth to go down near zero. It's happened in the past for other reasons, but humans can do this on our own. And if we allowed the Earth in huge climate change pendulum swings to cease being home for us, are humans going to Mars and basing in the lava tubes? Will they ever have a planet again like Earth? I think that we humans have never understood how precious Earth is. And that when I hear from military people that it is looked at, this planet, as a laboratory by 3 competing other civilizations, and we are constantly left in the dark about our relationship to the Earth, to the non-humans who made us, to the fact that saying that non-humans manipulated DNA in already evolving primates to create Homo sapien, that is not an insult to the divine field. That is not something that politicians and power brokers should use to keep us in the dark. More than anything, It should provoke and inspire all of us to try to constantly be learning what the truth is, and then to grow from that internal energy that is our soul, that truly drives us. And if we related to each other as the body containers of powerful souls that recycle and recycle and recycle, as Roger Penrose writes, I think we'd be able to live on Earth and actually love each other. Well, that's what I pray for, and I love you, and I'll see you next week. Thanks.
Turn on closed captions for YouTube videos by clicking the white CC button on the lower right. The default language for Linda's videos is English. If you would like to see the captions in another language, click on the white settings button next to the CC button. Select Subtitles CC and then select Auto Translate. Select a language and the captions will now appear in that language.
Sort of gone through, and they will hold their heads. I never had a cat do that before. And they'll pull against the comb, helping me get out snarls. And I think it's the best they've ever been.